your shoes. Actually, keep them on if they're stinky. But welcome to my home, the compound, also home of the ChrissieCast, 3 kids, 2 bunnies, and a cavoodle with an unhealthy obsession with a toy monkey called Kong. You're in great company because Australian author, journalist and ghostwriter Liam Pieper is here too. Liam grew up in a falling down mansion run like a commune where he chatted to drug addicts and poets in the kitchen over his morning Weet-Bix. His formative years involved falling in and out of love with the ladies and booze, riding bikes up the Central Grand staircase and becoming a teenage drug dealer. And I haven't even mentioned the fact he has ghostwritten a swag of bestsellers that you've probably read that he'll never, ever get credit for. This is truly an interesting person. ChrissieCasters enter the derelict palace of Liam Pieper. Welcome to the ChrissieCast, Liam Pieper.
Thank you for having me. What a pleasure. What an honour.
I have been desperate to talk to you for so long.
Get out of here.
And apologies that I had to build an entire studio when I could have just called you.
You could have, but no, I appreciate the effort. This is a very, the scene, is just magnificent.
Thank you.
The ferns.
Well, I thought with a podcast, you've got to have fake plants. So that's what we've done.
Yes.
I first came to know you with your memoir, The Feel Good Hit of the Year. Mm-hmm. And honestly, I'm a reader and there has been almost no book that I think of as consistently as your memoir. Can you tell people that maybe haven't read the book, which I think everybody should, about your unconventional childhood?
Sure. Well, first of all, thank you. That's very kind. I'm glad it stuck with you and that you think about it often. I think about it often. My lawyers think about it often. It's The Feel Good Hit of the Year was a memoir. I wrote it almost 10 years ago now.
Can you believe it?
God, time flies.
I know.
It? So,
10 years ago I was on I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here. So it's...
so we were both...
It's big.
We were both going through a lot.
Yeah, we were.
Probably on similar diets.
Yes.
I was eating a lot of roaches at the time.
Of course you were, yes.
Just in the cereal boxes.
No ox penis. No. Okay.
No, that was the weekend. The Feel Good Hit of the Year is story of my childhood. And, broadly the elevator pitch would be, although I'm bad at elevator pitches. So I grew up in a sort of a commune, I guess, an unconventional bohemian kind of environment. My parents were, big believers in art and music and, not running the rat race and all that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And it picks up. It begins in with me being born, I was
all good stories should.
All good stories that, you start in one place and you end in the same place.
That's it.
In between it's what you do that matters. I was born in a big sort of crumbling mansion, which sounds much more fancy than it is.
Well, I did a road trip to it.
Oh, did you?
Yeah. Honestly, your story is just so fascinating to me. And you're sitting here like it's no big deal. But this big, grand, dilapidated mansion in, is it like Ripponlea or somewhere around there, Elstonwick?
Yeah, Caulfield, North Caulfield.
Yeah.
Kind of Elstonwicky.
And it was called Labassa.
Labassa.
And I actually ended up doing a photo shoot there for a TV show I did called Long Lost Family. Ooh. So me and Ando looking moodily over the plaster reliefs and whatever. But I was so excited because I got to see inside it and I'd only ever read about it. So it's this huge mansion and from what I remember from your story, different families and people lived in different areas of the house altogether.
Yes.
Wow.
It's a building with a lot of history. I'm very jealous that you got to do a photo shoot there. We couldn't afford to. I go back now and again. You can take a tour of it. Like I think the second Sunday of every month. But, it's very strange to walk through it as a tourist.
Yeah.
I went to a murder mystery night there a little while ago, which we can talk about down the track.
And was it in your bedroom or?
It was. There was a fortune teller in my bedroom, actually on the stage where I was born. Because if you know the house, imagine this. You walk in the front hallway. It's a big grand hallway.
Grand, sweeping staircase like Titanic style.
And it worked out just as well. And then there's the big sort of staircase that goes up. You can Google all this if you know.
Yeah.
It's very easy to find. But if you go to the right, there's a sort of the music room.
Yes.
So it's a lot of dark mahogany and stained glass and slight raised wooden stage. That's where I was born. That was our flat. That was where my parents lived.
I didn't think there were hippies around in the 80s because you were born in 84.
Mm-hmm.
This sounds like something that would have happened in the 60s.
There are hippies everywhere. I mean,
they walk among us.
Yeah, they walk among us. If you turn on the light and you see one hippie, it means there's many more somewhere nearby.
So how many other people lived in that gigantic mansion with you and your brother and parents?
There's my brother and my parents. We had one flat. And I think there were, I couldn't tell you off the top, but there were maybe 10 apartments, 10 separate little apartments with, people who, the rent was cheap. It was, a loose collection of just sort of bohemian households, who all sort of lived by a similar ethos, I guess. They just wanted to live, step out of the capitalist rat race for a little bit and concentrate on music and art and all that kind of thing. So there was a couple upstairs, a queer couple, a couple of men who lived there who, wouldn't have, might have not been able to live so openly. They had a fashion studio at the top of my head. There were artists, there were painters, there were writers. And it goes back 100 years nearly. The house, it fell into disrepair somewhere along the line and it became sort of tenement slum housing for right now there's a Labassa historian listening to this and just growing furious because I don't have the details quite correct. But there was very cheap housing. So in the 40s, after the war, a lot of refugees moved in. There was the upstairs bathroom was a kosher butchery for a minute.
God.
And then, through the 50s, Bohemians started moving in. So a silent film star lived there. The great poet Kenneth Slessor maybe lived there for a minute, and he wrote a poem in which he mentions it.
Right.
A lot of great actors from the 70s.
I feel like another poet lived there, and again, apologies to any Labassa historians listening, but another story that has fascinated me ever since I read it was the sort of history of the Darrell family, the confectionery family.
What a story.
What a story.
Right?
Crazy. And I think one of the adopted sons was a poet who also lived at Labassa at some stage, I think.
That checks out.
Yeah.
A lot of people, like that who were
outcasts, misfits.
Precisely.
So how do you think living such an unconventional childhood, how long were you there for?
Ooh.
So you were born there, obviously, in the stage.
84. We left around 1990 from memory.
Right,
the house,
so that's a huge chunk.
Yeah.
That's, right up until you'd started school. And like me, my first 6 years of life were very conventional. Me, my family only, nobody else lived with us. If we saw uncles and aunties, it was on a weekend. How do you think that being around these people and so many people affected your childhood?
I mean, this is something, I'm working through with my therapist. So like if we can do this, if you don't invoice afterwards, I'm happy to go.
Oh, yeah, no, I do high caps. How good is high caps, by the way?
Fantastic.
Oh, my God.
I mean, I'm maxed out, but I mean, we can work around it.
But also, until there was high caps, I just never claimed anything. It's just like, oh, you just keep that. That's too hard for me. I can't possibly. Anyway, I will high caps you at the end of this.
My shrink can help you with that.
Great.
With the task setting and the goals. It's,
oh, God. I've got so much on my poor brain.
I know. Where were we?
How has that affected your childhood? And probably more broadly, how did that affect your character?
That's a really good question. It's hard to say how it affected my childhood because it's childhood. What frame of reference do you have?
That's right.
Something else. I mean, I can tell it was pretty magical to grow up in a big fuck off palace, you know, like a crumbling romantic sort of gothic. You know, by the time I came along, like most of the wild stuff seemed to have dialed down. Can I swear on this podcast?
Yes, you can do whatever you want.
Okay.
We're the bosses.
Fantastic.
So good.
By the time I came along, things I think had settled down a fair bit. But, you know, occasionally you would get some guy like there was a party once before I came along where the big front doors got ripped off. And so a guy would ride his motorbike in and up the stairs to park it to make sure it was safe at night. And there was a bit of this and that going on. I think there was a weed lab in the wine cellar for a while because this was back, you know, when you had to grow things hydroponically. When electricity cost less.
Yeah, that's right.
But the weed more. I don't know. How did it affect me? I've been scolded actually by my therapist that I'm too open-minded, like that I don't judge people very much. Which
Maybe that's where it came from.
Maybe. Like I tend to take people as they come, and I'm intensely curious about people. You know, like. When I meet someone who freaks me out, my natural reaction is to try and like, what's that about? Like, I want to get to know this freaky, dangerous person. You know, when I get a invitation to a strange podcast studio in a former cinema,
coming through the roller door.
Like, where do I come? How high?
Just talking about childhood and how. It is hard to say how anything affects us because our childhood is our childhood and it's completely bespoke to us. But yours was different to mine, but yours was different to almost everybody's. At what point did you realise that your life wasn't like everyone else's? Did it happen at school?
About 15 seconds ago now. What a question. You know, surprisingly late in the game. You know, probably I didn't realise the full extent of it until I wrote a book about it. You know? Because you never think to, you know, your family is your family and you never think too hard about the framework you come from. You know, I mean, unless you take certain steps, you know, unless something has happened that makes you question the framework that you grew up in and the beliefs you have and the viewpoints that you have and or the beliefs that you've just sort of inherited and come with your culture.
You don't question.
You just don't question. Like, you know, if your parents are very religious, chances are you'll be religious, and unless you make a choice about that along the way. So I don't know if there was ever like a moment where I realized that things were very deeply unconventional from anyone else's, because in many ways it wasn't. You know, we still got up in the morning and, you know, got dressed and went to school and hated school and, you know, complained about all of that.
It's interesting you say that point about how when you're in your family, you just take things as rote. That's the way it is. Sort of like Australians and Vegemite. We just eat Vegemite. We don't question it.
It's perverted. Practice.
I mean, it could be saltier. Is the thing.
Yes.
If we possibly could. But this situation happened to me today. I've just come back from Queensland where I visited my dad. Obviously, he's been my dad my whole life. And there are just little traditions and rules that I don't question. And I was talking to my producer, Jack, about, you know, staying with him. And I think he said, did you stay with your dad? And I said, no, we don't stay at Dad's place. And I said, actually, we don't go inside the house. And he's like, what? And I said, oh, yeah, it's just a thing. If we go over for dinner, we arrive outside the house and we stay outside the house and then we leave from outside the house. We don't go in the house. And he was absolutely shocked. But to me, that's just the way it is. We just don't go in the house.
That's interesting. Why don't you go into the house?
Well, I think I can't even remember the genesis of it. Well, the origins of it. I think maybe it was a cleanliness thing or like putting shoes on carpet or so. I just don't even question it. It's just the way it goes. But seeing somebody else's reaction to it, you go, oh, you know, I guess that is odd. But even when I find out that it's odd, it doesn't feel odd to me. It just feels like that's what happens.
Yeah, not to me either, but I'm intensely curious about this.
Yeah, but ask me anything you like. It's like we just don't even question it anymore.
Yeah, I understand that completely. I guess to take it back to your question earlier, you know, did I realize, you know, my parents were, I guess you could say mild recreational users of cannabis. You know, now and again on the weekend when I was a kid. They would hang out with their friends and listen to Leonard Cohen records, and Graceland was the big record of that time.
Oh my God, it is my favourite album of all time.
It is. I mean, sure they had to break apartheid to make it, but worth it, honestly.
I know.
I mean, that record.
It is the best still. And I did a pilgrimage to Graceland.
Oh, wow.
Not for Elvis, just so that I could listen to that album on the freeway from Nashville to Memphis.
Very cool.
And I cried the whole way. I just cried the whole way. I thought, I can't believe I'm doing this. I'm actually doing it.
I mean, yeah, absolutely. I'm there. I once drove across Nebraska so I could listen to Bruce Springsteen's Nebraska. And it really freaks me out, let me tell you.
It's the best.
It's the best.
It's like one of those, do you remember when we were little? Well, I'm older than you, but I'm sure that you were into this. You could buy from those fantastic primary school scholastic book fairs Indiana Jones books with an accompanying cassette, and you would play it and then read along with the cassette, and you would turn the page at the sound of a cracking whip. It was a similar thing to that, me on the freeway to Graceland and you in Nebraska. We've recreated that.
I mean, I can see that. I mean, I never had this tape thing, but maybe my childhood was very different.
You would love it. I think it was.
I think I would love it.
I think it was.
I might go and try
different.
and find that and just that's
Can
the
you
weekend
please?
sorted.
Now you've got a new book. I've read all your books, by the way.
Really?
Aren't I a good girl?
You are. Thank you.
I'm a big fan of yours.
Get out of here. I'm a big fan of yours.
And I just don't know why everyone doesn't have a copy of the feel-good hit of the year in their bookshelves. I really don't
that's
understand.
That's a fair question. Well, why don't they?
Why don't they?
I mean, shame on them.
Shame. But I have not read your latest one.
Oh, okay.
Appreciation.
Right.
And it is on my ever-growing list. I call it my ever-growing stack of optimism because I get such a dopamine rush from books and buying them and the promise that they have and the whole concept of having that kind of time. And lately it has ended there. But I look at the stack and I see your book and I still get a little rush thinking that is waiting for me. I know you're not good at elevator pitches, but anybody that's listening to this podcast who can tell that you are a fascinating man, and I haven't even touched on your ghostwriting yet, which I cannot wait. Give us an elevator pitch for appreciation.
Okay, appreciation. Well, it's the most optimistic of my books, so it goes right to the top of the optimism pile. I like that.
Double optimism.
Double optimism. Double optimism, double happiness. It's a book, it's a novel, it's fiction, but it's fun. I started writing it at the beginning of lockdown, when we were all sort of trapped inside.
It was the opposite of fun, but
the opposite of fun. And I just sort of started playing with an idea to sort of cheer myself up. I was like, what am I going to do now?
Yeah.
And so I was like, I'm going to write a book no one's ever going to read. It's going to be fun. It's going to be silly and pacey and ridiculous and full of plots. There's like 6 chapters and about 24 plots in the book.
Oh, my God.
And it's broadly about fame. It follows a celebrity, a sort of a dial-a-quote celebrity called Ollie Darling, who's like an artist, a fine artist, an Australian artist, but just sort of an Aussie blokey, good bloke sort of a celebrity.
Like Scott Cam.
Like no one in particular.
Okay, all right. Okay, sure.
But like, a broad pastiche of, the Australian bloke. This sort of, the way every politician pretends to be when they visit a Bunnings.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I've got him. Yeah.
And that's him. And he's been cruising for a while in his fame. He got famous all in a rush. His artwork makes a lot of money. And he's got a bit jaded, a bit drug addicted, a bit in debt to his drug dealers. And he goes on a panel show, not any panel show in particular, but a live TV panel show of a kind you might be familiar with.
Yes, it's ringing a bell, yeah.
And he runs his mouth. He misspeaks and says something, which I won't spoil, but which gets himself, he gets cancelled, basically. He becomes like a media pariah. And his career is over. His artwork, which was worth a lot of money a minute ago, is worthless overnight. So his agent and best friend put together a plan to like rehabilitate his fame, you know, to make him famous again, to make him Australia's sweetheart again. And that involves hiring a ghostwriter. And so him and the ghostwriter just sort of set off on a tour of being famous in Australia. You know, all the stations of the cross of being famous, you know, doing radio, doing TV, you know, a public apology, going to parties and schmoozing, you know, rich, powerful people.
God, it sounds like fresh hell.
Yes. I mean, if you're, you know, I'm very shy, but this is part of the job sometimes, you know. So just all of that sort of stuff, going on podcasts to talk about your new book, that kind of, you know, these things that come with the job. I wanted to write something fun about that because it's a side you don't see very often. You don't see very reflected very often in media. You see like celebrity. I mean, let's talk about it. Like when you're famous, so you know, I mean, and we're at the exact same level of fame and public, you know, adulation here. let's say, but there's an element of a product that goes into it. You know, there's an element of putting on a best face and putting on a show and you know, entertaining people and putting forward a certain aspect of your personality, which is true and honest and is a part of you, but only a part of you. And it's bolstered by all this work that goes on behind the scenes, you know, rehearsal and practice and thoughts and writing, and with that come writers and producers and you know, camera people, and you know, this whole industry of people who work very hard to help build a public persona.
Yeah.
So the upstairs, downstairs of all that is something I find very, very interesting because I've worked on both sides of that.
Yeah.
And it's just very funny, like just the way the way the sausage is made. So the book is kind of about that, but that's all very academic. It's fun. It's a love story. It's a self-love story. It's sort of a love story between two narcissists. You know, the main character and the ghostwriter, both of whom think they should be at the center of the story.
Yeah, right.
Kind of the friendship / love story between them.
I can't wait to read it. It's gone straight to the top of the optimism pile. Ghostwriting. Now, the definition of ghostwriting is, to me, my definition is that someone gets all the credit for something they haven't done, and I couldn't be a ghostwriter.
Really?
I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it. I would just be so full of rage.
Rage?
Yeah, at how unfair it is.
That's interesting. Let's unpack that. Why rage? Why unfair?
Because I did all the work. I did all the work of that amazing book. And then someone else's name is on it. That's a lie as well.
Not a lie, a story.
No, that's a lie.
And
I remember the first time I realised that ghostwriters were a thing. I'd read a book that I really, really liked.
Okay.
And I can't remember who wrote it now because I've wiped it out of my mind because I felt tricked that I thought this person had written it and they hadn't written a word.
Really?
Yeah. I want to acknowledge the person because I'm a writer, so I know what it takes. And if I enjoy someone's writing, I want to acknowledge that person, not the subject of the book. They're two very different things.
That's a fair point. But what was it you said earlier? A name on a brilliant story? Still a brilliant story. And a brilliant story that wouldn't be told perhaps otherwise. You know?
Yeah, but if I look at a beautiful table, I know that table is only there because a very clever person with incredible skills in timber has made it. I want to acknowledge those skills. I want to know how you can stand it.
That's very interesting. I mean, the table, you know, to follow that table metaphor through, I build a very good table, but
that's the skill.
Yes, but I mean, if you need a table built and you can tell me exactly how you want that table built, like if you want, how's your table? Is it oak? Is it glass? Is it marble? You know, is it, I've seen a lot of glass coffee tables in my time, but that's another story. You know, is it a big feast table? Like there are a million tables out there in the world. a table maker doesn't make the same table again and again. I don't even know what that word is. A carpenter?
Yeah, carpenter.
Jesus.
Do they make tables?
I don't know. I wouldn't pass the good bloke test at Bunnings, I'll tell you that much.
No, me neither.
It's a skill set. You spend all that time learning how to make a table. You're thrilled if someone asks you to do the thing that you're good at.
Yes, I know. But let's say I've got an idea for a table and we meet and you've got your lathe and I don't know, what else, sanding equipment, whatever.
Just tools. Tables
tools.
making.
The ute.
The ute.
Things in the back.
There's a kelpie in the back. It's
yes,
horrible.
yes.
Okay, we can.
I can see this. Yes. Weirdly, I can see it.
We should open a table workshop.
And then if I just go, Liam, make it oval, and then you make it oval, and then I go, not like that. Make it square at the edges, and then you make it square at the edges. Give it 3 legs. I don't care if it works or if it doesn't. And then you, with your skills, make it a 3-legged table that is beautiful and memorable. Why do I get the credit for the table when all I did was point out how I think it should look?
Well, you designed the table.
No. We're never going to agree.
We can agree some way because this is what I do. When you say 3-legged table, I'm like, okay, fine. If you pushed it any further, at some point I would have been, you know what, tables, sometimes they need, more legs is better. I have a certain set of skills. I know how to tell a story. I know how to tell a story and write it down, and I know how to use words on a page in a way that works.
And you don't feel resentment at all.
No.
Walking into a bookstore.
No, not at all.
And seeing, which is what's happened to you, 5 of the 6 bestsellers, all written by you, and your name not on any of them.
All written with me. This is an important thing. I love telling stories, I don't know, maybe it goes back to what we were talking about at the top of this conversation. I'm interested in people. I love getting to know people and getting to know what makes them tick. And,
me too.
It's a level of conversation, like to write a book for someone and with someone. It's just an incredible privilege to get inside their head and understand their point of view.
Do you get any credit at all?
I can do. Like I'd prefer, whenever possible, I want none. Normally,
Really, why? This feels like a surrogacy situation.
Interesting.
Feels like you've carried the baby.
That would explain some of the crazy food cravings that I get.
Do you know what I mean? I don't understand surrogacy either. I would be so attached to that baby and the work. I would find it very hard to let it go with grace.
I can imagine. I think of myself as more of I'm somewhere on a spectrum from OBGYN to midwife in this scenario. I don't actually carry the baby the whole way because even my books, it takes a village to raise a book. My books, I'm the primary voice, but I have so many good people. I have editors, I have friends who advise me, I have people who read along the way and like, this works, this doesn't.
Yeah.
Making arts, making any sort of creation, nothing is an immaculate conception. Nothing just appears overnight. It's an idea that someone gives you.
Tell the Catholics that.
Well,
I think they've got a problem.
Yeah, you can't tell them anything.
Yeah. No, you can't.
I can say this. My family was in the church a long time ago, which I guess explains a lot too.
Yeah.
But
mine too.
Well,
all the good ones are
true.
I really do think that being Catholic has, I don't believe in all of that rubbish anymore, whatever. But because it was there in my formative years, I think it's a good thing. Like I know all the good hymns, I know all the good girls that we went to school with, and
I mean, I don't have the hymns, but
really,
well, I didn't grow up in the church. I just, it was 2 generations back, and I had the guilt. I have the guilt.
Oh, the guilt remains.
My parents were very, very insistent that I not be raised as, in the Catholic dogma. Although my grandmother did take me and have me baptized, like when she was babysitting me one day. Just
They do that, those cheeky old Catholic grandmas.
She was like, came and had me dunked and like, and then was like, she bought me an ice cream. Was like, don't tell anyone about this. Definitely never put this on a podcast. Which is
Well, because they truly believed that you would go to hell.
She was terrified.
Yeah. She was doing you a favour.
Yeah. And we had a wonderful relationship. You know, me and my grandmother, you know, one of the key people in my life, all through my life until she passed. And, you know, I'll forgive her, you know, her occasional sneak baptism because she was a good woman.
I think it happened more than you would care to imagine.
No doubt. What about ghosting a second more?
Yeah.
I'm very intrigued by this idea that you would find it upsetting to not get credit.
I would.
I can understand that, absolutely. I see where you're coming from. And, you know, as a writer, I understand what that is. But I don't know, I've done a lot of work to let go of the best thing I've ever done for myself creatively is not compare myself to like my writing to anyone else's, to let it go and to know that what I'm doing for myself is different to the work that I do elsewhere. Like being a copywriter is satisfying in its own way, as you know. You know, and so like, yes, I nailed this description of
the Maya sale.
Of how you make a table.
Yes, yeah.
You know, there's a certain satisfaction in the craft, but also, I'm putting words in your mouth here, but when someone writes a book and they haven't brought anything to it, they brought everything to it. They brought, you know, they've got an incredible story.
How does it work?
How does it work?
Because if I ever write a memoir, I will write it myself because I can.
Because you have the skill set.
Yeah. So I can see that there are millions of interesting stories without the ability to be written. I understand that. Mm-hmm. So let's say that you were writing my memoir.
Okay.
How would it work?
Oh, well, where do we begin?
Do we meet?
We meet. First we meet, we do something like this. We meet under intense lighting.
Yeah. It really is like surrogacy. It's like I'm choosing a sperm donor.
This is taking a twist, but like, you know, we can go there. Is this what the cameras are for?
Yeah, this is what they're doing, yeah. Yeah, stand behind that screen. So we would meet and just see if we like each other.
See if we click. You know, that's the most important thing, you know, because it's important that you get along because you're going to be spending a lot of time together.
And I imagine confessing all sorts of stuff.
Yes. There's a lot of intimacy, for lack of a better word, that goes into it. There's a great deal of trust. You know.
Have people told you things where you've gone, actually, I don't think we should put that in?
All the time. Yes, all the time.
Really?
That's part of the job is helping people shape their story in the way that it's going to make it the best story, the sickest read, you know. And I mean that in the schoolyard sense.
Yeah,
like the most
fully sick.
Yeah, fully sick.
Yeah.
You know, just the most entertaining, gripping book that an ideal reader will pick up and be like, this is a wonderful book. This goes straight to the top of my optimism pile. That's what we're aiming for. And so that involves a lot of trust and a lot of honesty and a lot of like letting it through to the goalie. Yeah. And some of that is when people tell you something that I'm like, oh, this doesn't put you in a good light, or some of it is like, this is just not interesting, or it might just be something doesn't fit in the book, because a memoir is not, it's not the story of you can't tell someone's whole life.
No.
You know, in a book, but a part of a person's life. A memoir is a part of a person's life that tells you something greater about life, about being human.
Yeah.
It's taking their individual, unique experience. And then what is universal? What can anyone on the street learn about what this person has been through?
Can you tell me, and we will edit it out, some people that you've written books for? And I assure you this will not go to air. This is just for me, and I'm a vault.
Well, I can tell you the one that meant the most to me. And you can actually put this on air because he insisted I would have the credit.
Okay.
Maybe don't put it to air that it meant the most to me because, you know, all of my children are my favourite.
Yeah, that's right.
But so there was a guy called Eddie Jaku who wrote a book called The Happiest Man on Earth.
Yes.
He was a Holocaust survivor. He was in Auschwitz. His whole lost his whole family, all his friends, with one key exception. Lost everyone. Was devastated. Came to Australia as a refugee. You know, started again. Had one of those sort of great Australian success stories. You know, made a fortune in real estate. Bought up and I'm probably exaggerating here, but, invested heavily in Bondi when no one wanted to live in Bondi. Mm-hmm. It was like, I think this is going to be quite nice one day. We're going to open some juice shops. It's going to be...
We're going to wear activewear and rollerblade. Yeah.
There's going to be some goji berry situations.
Yeah, there really will. Some acai bowls. Yeah.
But he lived his life, and it wasn't until quite late in life, his 80s, 90s, that he started to talk about what had happened to him and to grapple with it. And he developed this most extraordinary philosophy, like this incredible outlook on life, about ways of looking at life to make it better. Because, like in a nutshell, I mean, this is paraphrasing it heavily, but he was like, I was in Auschwitz, Everyone I ever met was murdered in front of my eyes.
Yeah.
Don't sweat the small stuff. Be happy. Hug your mother. Take time to enjoy your life. Let it go. Don't let it never forget. But I mean, at the same time, live, because we're not here for long. We have so short time on this earth, so seize it. And so he told his story, and like the harrowing story of survival. But that was just sort of, in a way, that was just a frame. That was, something to carry his greater message, which was one of hope and one of, happiness. Seek happiness above all else, and look after the people in your life and do all that stuff, because that's the most important thing. And not even, the worst imaginable suffering can take that away from you sometimes. Not everyone will be able to get there, obviously.
Yeah.
Not everyone can do that, but it's worth trying. That was like the heart of his message. So I worked with him on that book. And so working with him on that book...
How many copies has that sold?
So many copies. I couldn't tell you off the top of my head, but...
I want to Google that.
Oof.
I'm going to Google it.
Google it. I should have pulled up the book scan before I came.
I'm going to tell you. Let's play a little game of sort of Larry M to higher or lower on Eddie Jaku. $19 at Big W.
Oh, bargain.
Let me see. I mean, that book is a New York Times bestseller 7 billion times over.
I mean, I think 7 billion is the figure. There's 7 billion human beings? I think everyone's got at least one copy. It did very well. It's been translated into, I think, over 80 languages,
It's extraordinary.
It's extraordinary success.
And you wrote it. You brought that to life.
I helped write it. He's the perfect example of why I enjoy the job. But no one else has his experience. There are other Holocaust survivors. There are other optimists. But no one had his precise, chemical reaction that brought those two things together. That he could suffer the way he had and come through with this extraordinary life viewpoint. And then he was 100 years old nearly when we began working together. He lived with his wife in a retirement home in Sydney. Living a retirement home life, going downstairs at, 7 a.m. for a biscuit and a cup of tea. And he just had this story inside him, and he would tell it at the Jewish Museum there, but otherwise he wouldn't. It was just...
Yeah, there was no way of getting it out.
Yeah, because English was... He was an engineer by training. He wasn't an artist or an arts guy. And English was, I think, his fifth language, If he was going to sit down and try and write a book in English, it wouldn't be... It would have been a struggle,
Yeah.
But then, I could meet him, and we sat down and we hit it off and we clicked and we became good friends. And, I could, in the same way that you can probably do a pretty spot-on impression of your best friends, I got his voice inside my head, and I could write his story in his words, which for him, because he was such a powerful oral storyteller, such an incredibly emphatic and powerful speaker, which is a talent into itself, one I don't really have, and I wish I had, because then I would do better on radio. But he had that. So I could write it down pretty much word for word, and then just here and there I could see the links, the puzzle pieces where it fit together, and the things that were more important to highlight, the pieces of wisdom, simple wisdom from a German speaker in English that were distilled in the most pure form and in a very digestible way, to take that and just not even polish it, just put some table legs under it.
Yeah, yeah.
And help it on its way. What a privilege, in that scenario, he's bringing everything. He's bringing his experience, his voice, his sense of humor, a century worth of wisdom, his moral authority of having seen what he's seen and come through in such a positive and shining way. He's bringing all of that to the table. And I'm just bringing a set of skills and helping him to build that, you know. He's the author. When I say author, I mean the person with the name on the book. In that scenario, they're the architects, you know. I'm just the builder. I'm not even the builder. I'm the bricky. I'm the chippy. I'm the carpenter.
Well, it's more than that as well, because you've changed my mind, by the way. I can see now.
Thank you. If you ever want to write a book, I'm very affordable.
Yeah, you've absolutely changed my mind, because it's not just about the skill of writing. Your magic that you bring to the final product, but also to your experience, which is really the most important part, is that you are the only one in that situation that can hear a massive volume of information and stories and with your heart go, that's something. That's something. And that is the skill.
That's an excellent way of putting it. You convinced me now. We're
good at this.
You nearly took me out of the job. I was going to quit. Sorry.
We are so good at this. And I've been meaning to read that book and I haven't yet. So naughty. That's the second. That's the second one in my stack of optimism that I'm going to get to. Let's talk Taylor Swift.
Oh, yes. Curveball, absolutely.
Did you go to the Eras tour?
Yes, I did.
How many times?
Just the once.
What night?
I went the first night.
Okay, so did I.
Yes.
What did you wear?
I wore just a Taylor Swift T-shirt.
Okay.
A vintage one I've had for about 10 years.
Okay, that's good. That is a subtle nod to the fact that you are not a new Swiftie.
No, I wanted to let these kids know. Anyone could jump on the bandwagon around midnights, whatever.
Yeah.
Get back to me.
I mean, look, no judgment.
No, I'm judging away. No, absolutely. I already felt very 40 being in the front row with all the teenagers.
I don't know about you, but I'm feeling 52. Yes. is what I was singing on the way in my fringed coat.
Yes.
And what else did I wear? I mean, I was a pastiche of every era. Mm-hmm. I had the lavender haze tinsel jacket that I ordered from New Orleans. Mm-hmm. Nearly didn't make it.
Oof.
Yeah. I had the fedora hat, the heart-shaped glasses. I mean, Liam, I lost my mind.
Oh, yeah.
Lost my mind. What is your era?
Oh.
No, I'm going to guess. I think you're a 1989 guy.
Ooh, snap. Yes.
You are?
Very much. I
am good at this. I've done it on the radio too, where people just tell me sort of what they like to eat, or I just get a vibe and I'm like, you are Reputation.
You would make a great ghostwriter.
I think I would. I think maybe that's in my future after I've done my own.
What is your era? I won't get.
Have a guess. Have a guess.
Oh, man.
You know me, well enough.
Boy, I feel like, I don't know. I feel like you're all eras in one.
I do love her, and I've got a soft spot for certain tracks off every album, but there's one album. Well, there was an album that was my era, and then it was usurped.
Oh, okay. So there's a clue. Okay, so it's not Fearless.
No.
It's not Red.
No.
I'm just going to count through them one by one.
No, think about it.
Okay, it's not 1999 because that's
what album could have come and absolutely knocked me off my feet?
Oh, it's not Folklore.
It is Folklore.
Oh, strong contender. What an era.
What an era. So I was Reputation.
Really?
Yeah. I was a Reputation girly.
I wouldn't have picked that.
I know, but think about it.
She was okay.
Badass.
Yeah. I confess I wasn't all in on Reputation until I saw the show.
The Reputation era in the concert was unbelievable.
Unbelievable.
The best era in the concert was Reputation.
Oh, yes. Okay, but yeah. You know what? My mind flipped about so many records in that, because the Eras tour, it helped contextualize It was like being taken on a curated tour through the Louvre, by the others. And it helped me understand, like, there were whole eras that I'd loved them, but I hadn't given them the attention that they deserved.
I agree.
Until, like, I don't know, folklore. I'm a big folklore girl. After 1989, folklore is it.
From the very first note of the one,
yes,
she had me.
I know.
That was it.
Oh, and the Archer opening on the Archer.
Oh,
and the,
God.
Gee whiz.
Gee whiz. And you know what? Evermore is also excellent.
This is where I was going. I never gave Evermore the time of day, and I don't know why, until Willow, the way Willow was staged, when they bring out the cloak and the weird witchy
I know,
orbs
the weird sort of pagan
I'm like, this
thing.
is the greatest shit I've seen in my lifetime.
I agree.
Yes, and so the whole thing discombobulated my whole world.
See,
Everything
I
got
love
switched
Evermore
around.
so much that it could take over from folklore if it wasn't for Nobody, No Crime.
Huh.
And you know how one song, it can disqualify it. Whereas in folklore, I have never once skipped a song. I've never not been in the mood for whatever rolls up next.
Really?
Ever. And I've listened to it sometimes 10 times a day. Evermore, love it, love it, love it. And then I get to Nobody, No Crime and I'm not always in the mood for it.
I mean, no judgment here. Of course, judgment-free space. But yeah, I mean, it's not my favourite track of hers, but Folklore, an unimpeachable record. For some reason, I would check out On My Tears Ricochet, and I don't know why, because then I saw it live, and I'm like, I've been so wrong. It was like, it was a road to Damascus moment. I'm like, this is perfection.
And that's what she does. I bet if we catch up in another year, I will say Nobody, No Crime is my favourite song. And I've now got a fresh fine line tattoo saying as much.
I mean, it happened. Did you get a tattoo when she came out?
I didn't.
Okay. Probably for the best.
I think so.
Yep.
She's in my heart.
She's in my heart. Yes, she's in all our hearts.
You know, you'll love this. So I love Instagram. It's the only one that I really know how to use. And I run it myself and I respond to everybody and I don't really – I've never had to block anybody because I've been lucky in my career where everyone's just so kind to me. It's so wonderful.
That sounds nice.
Oh, it's honestly, I can't believe it sometimes. Every interaction I've ever had with another human being in the 20 years since I did that show, Big Brother, has only been not only okay, it's been beautiful. So, yeah, I've been very, very fortunate. So I haven't had to learn how to block people. Well, when I showed all of the prep and my unadulterated joy about Taylor Swift, they started to come out. They started to come for me.
What?
I know. And they would say mean things like, grow up, act your age. Look at you carrying on like a bloody idiot, all that sort of mean
Who
stuff.
are these people? I'll hunt them down.
Oh, no. I just learned. I just blocked and deleted and I never felt anything about it. I just thought, I'm not angry at you. You're entitled to your opinion, but we are not a match.
No.
If you can't see that my Queen and Saviour Taylor is magical, then we have nothing further to discuss.
Who are these people? I'm never ghosting a book for them, let me tell you.
No, you are not. They do not get into the club at all. Liam, thank you so much for joining me. I will call you as soon as I've read your book, Appreciation. And please, if you've listened to this podcast and you find this man as fascinating as I do, find his book, The Feel Good Hit of the Year. You will just eat it up. Thank you, Liam Pieper.
Thank you so much.
Well, I really came around on the ghostwriter stuff, didn't I? What's a mind to be if not changeable? I do feel there is another conversation to have with an authority on the mind-blowing story that I know you will love behind the Darrell family, even though I am grateful forever for their service to soft licorice sticks in plastic-lined brown paper bags. Oh, my God, it's so good. Anyway, I'm on it. Stay tuned, ChrissieCasters, and set a reminder to check back at the ChrissieCast on Insta and Facebook for how I go with that. My washing machine has been beeping at me for hours and I want to shoot it. But before I go, Liam's books are available online and in all good bookstores. I recommend them all, but especially the one called The Feel Good Hit of the Year. His latest book is also called Appreciation. Get on it. Till next time. Also, can you check the letterbox on your exit? I'm avoiding going there because I think the council rates arrived and I don't want to be made angry about what I am paying for. Anyway, I digress. See you soon.